for taking the time to listen to that land acknowledgement. We're really excited to have our panelists today. Caitlin and I we really love the title of this panel, Careering While Asian. We were trying to think of something snappy, and we felt like that, I don't know, that just kind of fit. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have it moderated by Nara Sagale. So she's our first year college student here at Mesa College, and she's currently majoring in business administration with a long-term goal of working in the hospitality industry. Senara plans to transfer to finish her bachelor's degree at the California State University in Long Beach, and her inspiration for why she's furthering her education comes from those who came before her who did not get to live out their dreams. Nara is part of our K2 Kapwa learning community. So she's she's part of the second cohort, and she's a member of the Asian Pacific Diversity Club here at Mesa, which was started by our first cohort of Kapwa students. So what we had the Kapwa students do is they came up with some questions. We had the panelists choose a question that they would like to answer, and anything else that we will not be able to answer today, we might be able to do it like in the Q&A, or there's also a Padlet that we have the questions on. But Nara will get us started with the questions that we have for the group, and then each panelist will give their responses, and then there are some questions that they're going to uplift from the class. So Nara, take it away.
Hi, everybody. For the first question that we have today is, what are your primary influences for choosing the career path you have? How have you come to reaching the success you have in your respective careers? And what values do you consider the most important in pursuing a career?
Hi, or we can jump in and I can go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Nguyen, and I know you all have probably read the bio, but just a quick introduction. I'm she, her pronoun, and I'm second generation Vietnamese American. My parents immigrated to America as refugees after the Vietnam War, and I was born in the States. I'm from San Francisco. That's where I'm based now, but I spent many years, 8 years, in San Diego, and that's where I actually earned all my education, my bachelor's, my graduate degrees. So my background's in education. Very happy to be here today. Thank you for all the together, the organizers, and thank you all for joining. So to answer your question, my career personally has not been very linear, right? I did not plan every step of the way. I did not imagine that I would end up at Google in my current role at all. If you were to ask me, several years ago, I initially started out working with high school students and in research, and then went into nonprofit, doing anti-bias work for local school districts in the Bay Area, as well as bigger companies. And I had that job for a while while I was finishing up my dissertation. So I finished all my courses in San Diego, and then I moved up to the Bay Area to do my research because I could do that from anywhere. And while doing that, I actually got the job at the nonprofit, and I really liked that job. When I eventually reached a place where I felt I needed to make a career move, right, just like, maybe capped out at the nonprofit, I actually pursued a few career paths. So it wasn't quite planned, but initially I was looking for professor positions, right, which that was more the initial plan when I got my doctorate degree, and looking at college counseling positions as well, and then looking at diversity consultant positions for the bigger companies in the Bay Area, right? Because I really liked that work, and I felt like there was an opening there to do that at these tech companies where I felt like they were probably a little bit behind. And the values I consider to be most important for pursuing a career are, I think, understanding your interests, even if it's a very high level, right? And it being okay if it changes over time. For example, I know that I generally am really passionate about and excited when I get to help others, work with people. That alone may be a big window, right? It's like lots of different careers, but at least I know what I'm looking like. Generally, what I'm looking for is that I get to work with people, I get to help them in some ways. And I think second, being really open and flexible to opportunities, right? You don't need to put yourself in a box. You don't need to put your abilities in a box. If I had done that, if I just thought, oh, education, I can only be a teacher or a professor, then I probably wouldn't end up where I am today. And understanding your areas of strength as well, right? I feel like people tend to really, your strengths can really lead you to something that you're interested in and guide you in your next steps. And then in terms of success, I've always really been a believer that only you can truly define what your success looks like based on your values, reflection on yourself and your situation. Yes, there are things like recognition at work, promotion, the value that you bring to your job and your work, but success will look different and may change based on individual situation, right? At the end of the day, you need to run your own race. If you get too caught up in comparing yourself to others, right, and whether you measure up or are successful as it's defined by others, you may lose sight of your own path.
Did they ask or? Yeah, I could go. Hi, I'm Phillip. I'm part of the panel board here. I'm a operating partner and chef for Open Gym. And so I guess the context to the question would be, I grew up cooking, coming from a Filipino family. It was surrounded by food, family parties. I cooked a lot with my grandmother, but I think part of the Asian community is that you want to work in a very safe job and something that is going to provide for the family. And usually that's not in a creative field. And so I never really thought of it as an opportunity that I could become a chef or even cook. Because I was actually in medical school. My family dropped out and went to culinary school. And I really just fell into it. It wasn't something that was, I wouldn't say calling to me, but I was just always cooking for friends and family. I was cooking while I was in college, having dinner parties. And my roommate at the time suggested that I should go to culinary school. So it was the farthest thing from my mind. But once I fell into it and I started to go through the classes and then start working into the workforce, I found out it was something that I loved to do. That eventually turned into a passion. I would say, finding success, especially in the hospitality world, where it is non-API, but also definitely male dominated. You definitely have to find mentors, but also be a mentee, and find the people that is doing the things that you want to do. Learn and educate yourself, because it's something that you can't go to school for. You're not going to learn how to make the 5 mother sauces, or learn how to read a P&L, or understanding food costs and things like that. But it's just something by having great mentors that can guide you and teach you along the way. Then at some point in your career, you should start internalizing these experiences and then asking yourself why. And I think from there, whatever it is that you hope to create and have an impact within your own community, it starts to resonate.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Kim. I'm a general dentist here in downtown San Diego. If you saw my bio, I'm actually originally from San Diego and left for a while to study. And why wouldn't you want to live in San Diego? Everyone else does too. So I made it back. My family and everybody's here. So I'm very happy to serve, the community. And really, I also just want to thank everybody for inviting me to be a part of this. Really excited. As far as my primary influences, you would think naturally I'm Asian. I got pushed into healthcare, but I actually wanted to do it myself. I was always leaning towards health and, medicine, but found dentistry
to be what was right for me later. That's amazing, Phillip. You were in med school. I feel like I don't know if dentistry happened for me or if I didn't know if I was going to get into med school, but it all worked out that dentistry is a little more art-centered. It's a lot more creative, and it ended up being the right fit for me. And although I do have an uncle who's a dentist, that wasn't my primary influence. If anything, it kind of pushed me away from dentistry a little bit. But it was, again, I think life happens so that you find where you're supposed to be. And, you know, I think as far as figuring that out, that's something that, you know, we have to be open to failing and, you know, trying and maybe not getting somewhere when you think you're going to get there. But I do think that for any career, whatever it is, it starts with the goal. And in my case, when you're used to studying and only being a student and having this certain goal that you're aiming for, that's just kind of all you do. And I was highly supported by, you know, all the people in my life. I never had to worry about doing anything but going to school. And for that, you know, I don't think I'd be here if I was having a lot of other things on my plate. So I think that when it comes to being successful as well, it's just, I think, being resilient and grinding and really just not only being accountable for yourself, but just truly being, you know, working towards something that you're clearly aiming for. And then, you know, all of a sudden, sometimes you get there.
I believe I'm last. How y'all doing? So I'm Virgil Ramos, pronouns he, him, his. I was born in the rice terraces in the Far East in the Philippines. I was raised in the Bay Terraces in Southeast San Diego. So I've been a San Diego resident all of my life. You know, in all of my years, I had a slew of different jobs, from like fast food to retail to after school programs to mail carrier at one point, from computer tax software to digital media where I am right now. So to kind of get to the questions, my primary influences for choosing my career path, honestly, were I was very much influenced by the people around me. Now, don't get it twisted. You know, I believe that I was empowered to create the circle around me. I curated the circle around me to help support that. So for me, that helped me define my own success, but my success is also defined internally instead of, but it took me a long time to learn that success was not defined by these external factors that told me what they think success looks like, because often it's been rooted in different definitions of success that stem from, you know, the white supremacist construct, which is very different than where I believe that I want to carry out my future to be, right? So success is more defined internally versus what I have been taught was success before. Because if that were the case, then it'd be like be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. No shade to Dr. Kim over there, but I'm just saying that like they would have told me that success means these different things. So for me, that was often defined by those values. So the values that I consider most important when pursuing a career for me, that is personally integrity and community, because I believe without each other, you wouldn't go far as you could if you were doing it by yourself. So I believe very firmly in the values of integrity and community.
Thank you all for your beautiful answers. Moving on to our second question. Our question is, were your career and academic choices / goals always supported by the people who surrounded you?
I can go in reverse if y'all aren't tired of hearing from me yet. So, as I kind of hinted that, you know, my career choices weren't always supported by my folks. But as I hinted earlier, you know, I curated the circle around me. So they then were able to support the different things that I may have had. I may not even had fully fleshed out ideas to end up where I did. kind of came on a whim. I was, this is after I left Intuit, so I was working on, again, TurboTax software. But when I was also pursuing my my hobbies, which was more graphic design, which was a little bit more social media. Again, when I was in high school, social media wasn't even a job. So you can even dream that job later on when I was young, but now you can. So my hobbies kind of tinkered me into where I am now. But also the people that supported me says, hey, the person that landed me the job when I was at the ACLU prior to the job that I am at PolicyLink just came off of a conversation, and she had identified that I had all these various skills. And she's like, why don't you apply to this job? You're actually a great fit. So now I've been in the digital media space for the past 6+ years now. Initially, I was working at a local affiliate for the ACLU, and now I'm more on a national scale with PolicyLink. And it is, even if it's not, my parents honestly still don't know what I do. If I'm 100% correct, they just asked me if I could fix a PDF for them or, you know, upload something to Facebook. Aside from that, that's all they think they know. But for the most part, I believe because I curated my circle, they do support me.
Hey, Ferch. I know we haven't seen each other since the Kimball Towers, but just want to say what's up. We grew up in the same neighborhood, came up from South Bay. So yeah, I would like to say that, you know, my family at first, obviously dropping out of med school at UCSD, they at first were hesitant. The rest of the family, you know, just typical Filipinos, very opinionated. But maybe in my first year, and I was a sous chef at a restaurant called The Guild in Barrio Logan. My parents came to eat, and I was able to cook the food and then drop it off and explain the dishes to them. And I think they were able to see the passion and the love that I actually had for it. And truthfully, from that moment on, they never questioned me about my choices and what I was going to do. In terms of the community outreach, I think, you know, as you kind of work through the different restaurants, you know, you do have to attain a certain level of knowledge, and by that, you have to do stages or trails. So you don't work somewhere for, you know, like a year, and you learn everything you can soak up from that chef, and then you have to move on, because if not, you're just going to keep learning the same thing over and over. And so over the next couple of years, it was just a lot of travel, attaining knowledge from different chefs, different techniques, different ideas, and then learning to apply those ideas to the things that inspired me and that things that I wanted to create. And I think it just resonated with people within my community. I think not a lot of minorities were coming into this industry. And so even for me, when I came in, there wasn't a Filipino chef or someone that looked like me that I was able to inspire to be, or look for inspiration from. And then now I think it resonating with the community and being back in South Bay, and you hear and meet young people that, you know, start to say that, hey, I started to cook because of you, or there was a lot of inspiration through this and that. And I think that then it tells me that the choices and the career path that I decided to take was the right one.
I can jump in next. And same here. My mom has no idea what I do. My academic goals were generally supported by the people surrounding me, right? Although not with some bumps in the road. Like I went to San Diego State, very proud of that. My mom had a hard time with me going to San Diego State because it wasn't a UC, right? And she made that very clear to me. And but when I continue on, I kept going to grad school. I think she still didn't quite understand what I was doing with grad school. She probably just thought, oh, okay, she's gonna be a teacher or something, right? Because I was in education. But she supported me in continuing my education, of course. She's like, okay, great, you're still getting your college degree, in her eyes. And then my career goals, In my case, you know, at a young age, my mom did have the expectations of me to go into the medical field. And when I was in college, I think she was just glad I was getting my degree, and she's definitely happy that I have a job and can provide for myself now. So right now, I don't think she would be complaining, but she definitely does not know what I do in my job, and at all. Like I now I'll probably have an exercise and I'll go ask her later, what does she think I do at work, and see what she says. My friends and family in general were supportive. If anything, I think I was internally struggling a bit with the career shift, right? Going from nonprofit to this big tech company and feeling like I was selling out. And what has helped me through that, though, is going back to my values and understanding that I can always add to my career path, or change my career path, right? I think just being confident in the work that I'm doing, right? That I still get to work with people. But to be honest, when I first started at Google, I was almost embarrassed in some ways, right? Especially when I've been surrounded with friends that were like truly in education, for example, and feeling like, did I sell out, right? I'm going to this big company and I'm doing this, and I'm not as close to the students anymore, and doing that. But that's something that you have to work through for yourself too, and realize that, you know, what's best for you at the time and what impact can you make. And I think that's what's helped me. And then also giving me the opportunities to still do work, right? Like my job, right? My day job is one thing. My time and doing other things and volunteer work or adding, right? Like for example, I want to lecture at some point. I haven't gone down that path yet, but that's something that I want to do instead of being a full-time professor. Those are things that you can always add and change. You're never going to have to be stuck in one place.
And for me, you know, I have always been supported, but specifically my third year at UCSD, I thought for a second that I was going to not go into dentistry and pursue dancing, because I had such a love for dance and performing. And guess what? That didn't fly really well with my family. But also equally, you know, it was, if anything, a calling, I think, to see that I had a lot of creative in me that I needed to also express. But I believe I made the right choice. I don't think my dancing maybe would reach as many people as I can, you know, in doing dentistry. So for that, I'm thankful. And I also realized I can just dance around, you know, have some other ways to still do those things. But my parents literally said, you can dance from room to room after you're a dentist. So that was a quote. But equally, looking, you know, big picture wise, I had mentioned that, you know, I have been completely supported by my family, my friends around me. Also, if they were not also pursuing great things, you know, we uplifted each other. But just being raised, my whole family is, you know, full of small business owners. My parents immigrated here, and I don't remember seeing anything but them grinding, you know, 7 days a week, just doing whatever they had to do, doing that so that I can go to school. And in that way, I was 1,000% supported. And again, if I didn't have those, you know, the comfort of having that security, it would have been a much harder road to get here. So I'll give it to them that I'm not dancing full time, but that's okay.
And moving on to our last question, it is: mistakes, problems, and failures are inevitable. How do you fall forward and keep yourselves motivated? What do you think is needed to endure these hardships and continue pursuing your career?
I can jump in here. What a great question, not just about careers, but for life, right? I think humans are so resilient in nature, right? It may look different or take a different amount of time to bounce back, but we're all resilient. And I'll be honest, I didn't always fall forward, right? Sometimes I just fell back and I sat there for a minute and then I got myself back up at some point. So I didn't always fall forward as quickly as I wanted to. For example, when I moved back to the Bay Area during my research period, right, I was supposed to be working on my dissertation. I spent an entire year not doing a single thing related to my dissertation. Like I got a job, which is, you know, I was working and all that, but I kind of lost the motivation once I moved, and I kind of slacked off. And I think to that point, I was looking back, I think I was just really burnt out, right, from schooling constantly, and I needed a break. And I had moved from San Diego, where all my colleagues were, to somewhere else where, you know, I didn't, everyone around me, but there wasn't a lot of friends that lived up there that could relate, right? And once I was ready, it all moved. Once I was ready to jump back in, it actually all moved pretty quickly, like being able to do my research and my dissertation. And sometimes I would think like, oh, if I had just done it back then, I could have finished, but probably not, because I don't think I was ready, right? I needed the time to step away and to do good work. So sometimes you really have to just give yourself a bit of grace, right? And be honest with yourself as well, and set expectations for yourself, right? Like, do I feel like a failure because I didn't meet someone else's expectations, or do I feel like a failure because I didn't meet my own expectations? Those are two very different things. And was this something that was within my control, or was this something that's outside of my control, right? I think those, like, kind of rooting yourself back into the facts of things can always help. And a great support system and talking to people is always helpful, right? So you don't have to hold anything in or feel ashamed. I think as a society, we tend to want to hide our quote unquote failures because maybe we feel embarrassed in some way, when in actuality, most people have probably felt lost or uncertain, or that they failed in some way, right? And, you know, and things like not getting into a certain program, or not getting the first job I wanted, for example, are those really things that are failures, right? Were those really things in my control? And at the time, it you know, you can still say it sucks, and, you know, that you really wanted it, but you didn't get it. But looking back, or for me personally, looking back, like I was still qualified for those jobs. Maybe someone else was just more qualified at the time, right? Or there's different things. It doesn't mean that I couldn't do those jobs. So not looking at failure as something that defines you, right? Defines like, oh, this is the one situation that's going to define my self-worth, right? So I try not to tie self-worth and my abilities to one situation or one outcome that wasn't something that I wanted. And so being able to separate those two things, I think, goes a long way in building your own resilience.
So I guess the idea of failure, especially in the food world, it is built and structured on you know, human mistakes. It's we have your line cooks, and then your leads, and then your sous chefs, and your chefs, and you have these structures set in place to capture human error and to be able to handle kind of what we call guest recovery. And, you know, through that process is the process of failing. The fail harder to succeed, and the only way to go through it is a straight line. And a lot of the cooks and a lot of people that work in the industry, they look for this level of perfection, but it just doesn't come natural. And a lot of times people don't realize that they see someone in some form of success, but success comes against some form of friction. And if there isn't that friction that's challenging you and telling you that you know, that this struggle or concept or idea, then it's really not hitting home to you and your why. And so a lot of the practices that I have with our team is to just go through it, for them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, but have the sense of guidance and a mentorship to help them when they do fall, and create that structure within said programs. And it could be in anything, right? In your work, in life, and to learn from those lessons.
Okay, virtual or Dr. Kim?
Sure, I could go
Okay.
there. Both Addie and Phillip kind of are hinting at what I was going towards too. We talked about resilience. We talked about lessons, right? Because I'm a very firm believer in you know, turning all your losses into lessons, so then it just stays a win-win situation, versus, you know, constantly thinking you're losing all the time. And, you know, you might have a day where you feel like you are losing all the time, and that's absolutely fine. Like for me, sometimes I'll look at a snow globe, this is going to be a very weird metaphor. When it's working, it's shaken up, right? And then you see the snow like working and falling. But sometimes when it stops working, then you see things more clearly, right? So for me, sometimes you need to stop working in order to see a better picture of like what you need to be doing, where you need to be going with it. So sometimes you do need that break to just kind of like fail forward, yes, but sit with that and then turn that into the lesson, because the lesson is there, even if you don't see it at first. Because you will often fail. 99% of the time you fail. I'm a big baseball fan. So, a lot of their success is based on batting average. A good batting average is .300. That's 30%, right? You're getting 30% of your hits anytime you go to the plate. So success doesn't even look that great if you look at it. That's an F, right? If you're looking at academically. So everyone's success is different. So you have to have different kind of, again, what we hinted at earlier, different definitions of success, but the mistakes and failures are inevitable. And it is how you frame it and how you move forward with it and how you learn from those mistakes, because they eventually can strengthen you, I believe.
I just wanted to add to what Kurtz was saying is that, everything's about perception. And one thing that I like to practice, because everyone goes through fear and anxiety. And, those common traits are, sweaty hands or raised heartbeat or temperature. But if you actually correlate those same emotions to a rational feeling like excitement, and then you start to train your mind that these feelings or these emotions that I'm going through is not fear and anxiety, but actually excitement, you can take moments like public speaking, like business, or whatever it is, and be able to conquer those moments.
And for me, as far as getting through the mistakes and learning from them, it truly is like having to practice being kind to yourself, because we have so much expectations, and nobody wants to fail or say that their best effort didn't get to their goal. But I find that especially in my line of work too, I mean, things happen. You make decision calls, and sometimes it could have ended up better. So I think a big part of that is just acknowledging it to myself, to the patient, or to whatever the situation is. I find most people just want to, whatever the reason is, if they hear that something didn't go right, they just want to hear it and understand it, and then the goal is to make a plan of how to make it better, and how can I personally not have this happen again? How can we set a new protocol, or how can we avoid this type of issue again? And I think that's going to be a practice of life. We definitely don't have it all figured out, even though we try to fake it till we make it, and a lot of the time it works. But in general, we're human, and I think we just have to understand that we're not perfect. And other people, when they hear that too, I think are empathetic to that. We just do our best.
Awesome. Thank you all for your answers to these questions. And thank you, Nara, again for asking them. You did such an amazing job. We did have a couple of questions that popped up during while you were talking. Hold on, I gotta look for it. One of them, and I guess this goes to anyone, this is from Irene. She wondered, did anyone experience a culture shock moment in their industry? And then did it motivate or discourage you? And I think Chef Phillip talked about it a bit, but what about, well, you can talk about it again, Phillip, if you want.
I think even for me, like I went to culinary school like 18 years ago, and you learn French technique, and then you go into the modern workforce, which is modern American food and with French technique. And you start working at different restaurants that just apply that same idea to everything. And when I started to venture off to do my own solo projects and with my team, it was an exploration of identity, but then understanding like, who am I as a Filipino American, as a chef, as a first generation, and how is it going to be culturally represented and received within our own communities, but then the outer communities. I think the struggles have been just like any other minority, where I've seen positions where we're equally as experienced, but it would go to a Caucasian male. Or if I would, even to this day, the struggle to even find investors or bank loans, the redlining, it still happens to anyone, even for myself and the things that we're building. But seeing the next generation kind of look at us and see us as an opportunity, it empowers me more to find the answer and to show the way and in a sense open the door for the next generation.
Great, thank you so much. Did any of the other panelists want to jump in on that question? A culture shock in their industry?
I don't know if this would necessarily a culture shock, but something that I think I struggled with, especially when I started off doing the anti-bias work, right? I would go into a lot of companies and a lot of school districts working with students, for one, which was great, and then with adults, a lot of adults. And I look young, right? I'm an Asian woman, and I go into a lot of these communities where there were a lot of white staff, and I remember feeling insecure that I'm not going to be taken seriously, right? And or that they don't think that I know what I'm talking about because I look young, and realizing that, okay, well, how am I going to navigate that, right, in my career? Because it's my job. This is something that I need to do, and fortunately, my job lent itself to being able to use my identity to talk about these unconscious and conscious biases that these people might be having in this workshop. Because that was the whole point of the work, right? Was to help people realize the biases that they carry and their perspectives. And so I was able to use myself. I would literally stand in front of a room of all these people and ask them to actually tell me what they thought about me without knowing me, right? And using that to be able to bring a message across even clearer and do more impactful work. And so that was something. And I think what helped me is just to make sure that I was very confident in the work that I'm doing, prepare, right? So usually I get nervous when I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Or I'm not able to articulate what I want to say. But the more ways you can educate yourself and feel confident in what you know. And when I will go into the room, like, I know what I'm talking about. I know this work. These people don't, right? So I'm the expert in the room right now, along with my colleague. So I could have confidence in that and be able to do the work that way and overcome any fears that I may have had.
Yeah, a couple of us connect with it. Caitlin and I definitely feel like that when I go into a classroom, and I keep wanting, I kind of want to go back to the campus so that I can do that whole, just sit with the students and just kind of like, where is this teacher? Why isn't she here yet? And just kind of fake that I'm one of the students. But I also get that outside of the classroom. If I mention that I teach, and the first thing people want to ask is, oh, what grade? And they always say it with that tone. What grade do you teach? So it's something too, like I think a lot of API women have to kind of deal with, right? Especially if you're in a position of power, or you have, or you're being looked at as the expert. It's almost kind of like, well, this little girl can't actually be the expert, right? That she's going to introduce the person who's going to come in and actually show us. Yeah.
Adding to that, like as educators, you all trying to command an audience, right? And being able to do that, and the way you do us that like more quiet or submissive, and maybe and naturally, I feel like I am more of a softer voice, so I'm not like booming. My voice is not booming in a room, but how do I command a room still and the attention needed?
Yeah, I had to start like wearing like I was thinking, well, I'll just wear my combat boots and pants and go into the class and seem a little bit more, you know, masculine passing or something. But it's a very interesting, annoying feeling. Actually, it's not interesting. Okay, let's see. We had another. Well, oh, sorry, Dr. Kim, did you want to jump in with that culture shock industry?
You know, I feel like when it comes to dentistry, you know, and you get out of school, you go to, you know, you're an associate somewhere, you're trying to figure out how to be a real dentist. And, you know, as you go through these different places, you learn what your boundaries are and what kind of person I want to be, what kind of practice I want to have, how do, you know, and it's unfortunate. That's why I get it. A lot of people have bad experiences. You know, some places test you ethically. Like if you want to get paid, you have to push, you know, again, there's a lot of different situations that I don't think you realize as a student, as, you know, a fresh grad, or, you know, when you're really in the real workplace, that I have to be able to sleep at night. I have to be able to make these decisions that I'm proud of. And again, we're dealing with human beings. You know, every part of that matters. And so I don't know if it's a culture shock isn't that turned me off, but it definitely, you know, when you get these little challenges, you have to make a decision on which side you're going to go to. And I think that help me build my, you know, my standards of what I'm, of the person I want to be, the type of dentistry I want to practice. So again, all those failures and challenges teach you how to be better and what you don't want to do.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kim. We have another question that just popped in here. One of our Kapwa students actually asks, do any of you have career advice? Oh, actually, let me post it here. Okay. Do any of you have career advice or advice in general for someone who is majoring in humanities or a non-STEM major? As someone majoring in APIA studies, I get so worked up about landing a career in comparison to my STEM friends who already have a great certain area of work they want to go into. I often get questioned about what I might be doing with my major. I have certain areas, industries I am interested in, but I'm mostly unsure as of now.
I think I can kind of go into that one a little bit. For me, I don't have a STEM, you know, anything at, honestly. And this is maybe not specifically for humanities in general, but my advice to you, Brian, would be more so like, first, you know, try your best to stop comparing what your journey looks like to other people's journeys, because it's not going to look the same. What serves one person may not serve you, right? And if you're trying to identify, you know, certain industries or different areas you might want to take up instead of what you're doing, if it doesn't speak to your heart or your soul, I don't think you should, in my opinion. You know, I honestly believe that if you're happier with whatever your 9 to 5 is, even if it's a 5 to 9, even if it's like a whatever time of day, whatever you do for your work, if it doesn't speak to your soul, you're not going to be happy. And for me, in order to be a contributing member of society, a contributing member of my community, I need to be happy first. And if I can't do that, then the community around me I'm doing a disservice to them, you know, because sometimes I'm not accountable to myself. I'm more accountable to my community. And that's a deeper issue in itself. But know that what you are doing, trust your gut, you know, and I'm going to answer another question kind of coupled with this is that I often get imposter syndrome. It happens all the time. Just today, I was having imposter syndrome because I was like, am I in the right place? Is this the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? But I get reaffirmed by my colleagues, by other people, but also myself, knowing that the work that I'm doing serves me because it serves other people. And I think that is what you might have to answer for yourself, is what speaks to your soul, what speaks to your heart, and then do that thing.
Thanks for Childs for addressing the other question that we have in the Q&A. So I think just both questions are kind of open to the panelists, the one from Brian, and then Jennifer Lee also asked, have you experienced imposter syndrome?
I can go ahead. Let's see. I definitely have experienced imposter syndrome, almost probably everywhere I go, right? And I think what's crazy is that when you talk to other folks, most people experience imposter syndrome as well. So it's like kind of like this quiet thing where it's like, oh, are they going to catch me? They're going to realize that I'm not doing a good job, and that I'm doing a poor job. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel like you didn't earn your spot somewhere, right? And that there's something going for you if your life has led you to a certain path, right? And yeah, there may be things that I don't know at the time, but will I take the time to learn? Do I have the resilience and the grit to be able to apply myself, right? So ask yourself those questions. And if so, then what makes you an imposter in that way, right? Because you're willing to learn, you're willing to put in the work, and you're going to bring value, right, in that way. And to answer Brian's question, let me go back really quick. I just lost my train of thought. What's Brian's question again? Any career advice? Okay, so I'm not in STEM either, right? My background's in education, and I think I relate to this question a lot. It speaks to me a lot because I think I went through that, and sometimes go through that now. I have a lot of friends that are engineers, right? As well up here, especially in San Francisco. And I remember a time I was in grad school and I was feeling really down about myself and thinking like, what am I doing? Like, I'm in counseling and education, and I was starting to let other people's voices kind of get into my head where like, oh, I'm getting my PhD. What are you getting your PhD in? In multicultural education. Oh, and I can kind of see it in the eyes, right? Like, oh, that's not chemical engineering. That's not, it's at XYZ. Oh, that's just education, right? Okay, like not impressed. And I was starting to let that get to me, like these little microaggressions and these little comments. And I remember talking to a roommate, a good friend of mine one day, and I remember her sitting me down, just saying like, you told me in your master's, like, that you would cry, you're like talking about counseling, and Amber can attest, remember this because we went through the program together, but she was like, okay, so what, you're not in the medical field, right? You're not going to be a scientist or whatever right now, but what you explained to me and what you do and what you're learning, she's like, I would quit day one, right? So I think that kind of helped me open my eyes a bit more, in that, my strengths may not be other people's strengths, or my interests, right, not be other people's interests, and stop comparing and what people expected of me, or that I wasn't impressing someone, when really this is my passion, is something I'm interested in. And not everyone can be in the field that you're in. So if you're in APIA studies, right, not everyone's going to be able to articulate or understand the struggles in that way and be an advocate and whatever you want to do with that, right? And so some advice there is just to what Ferchil was saying earlier, is just don't compare yourself to others. Try your best. We'll do it every once in a while, but catch yourself and try not to do it too much. And respond with, I actually don't, like, being honest too. Like, if you don't know what you want to do yet, you can say like, I actually don't quite know what I want to do, but I do know that I love this work. Maybe I can do community work in the future. Maybe I can go and teach, just throw out some ideas, but I don't have a certain path, and I don't want to have a certain path right now. I'm still exploring.
I think also we don't really recognize the small things that we're really good at. It could be anything. I find that everybody I talk to opens up and starts crying and shares their life story with me. Or, we the things that we take for granted as being, not a big deal to us, are, maybe something that somebody else can't do for themselves. And again, I think, as both of you were saying, that it's about really recognizing what our joy is, how, how can you share that with others, and possibly, motivate other people to find something that they like, or, you know, again, there's obviously I'm not in that realm, but I do think that that kind of goes into being kind again to yourself, to be able to see what your strengths are. Because I guarantee you that somebody else, that might be something that someone else is struggling with.
These are such heartwarming questions. I wish I wish I had more of folks like you when I was a community college student, like you know, decades ago. That would have been really nice, just to know you just have to push through it. But also, you know, kind of like not comparing yourself. That's something I feel like is really, really what APIs are good at, because I feel like our parents have kind of really showed us how to do that really well. There's a longer question here. Do you guys see it, from Jared? It's about if an international student asks whether they should use this strategy. Oh, there's a whole thing up here. Let me copy and paste it so everyone can see it. Okay, my BFF goes by Alita in the United States, but goes by her name, Ling Zhen, whenever she visits parents in Beijing. Research shows this from a utilitarian perspective. International students, postdocs, and researchers who change their name increase their odds of being hired and or a STEM grad finding a company sponsor for an H-1 visa. But we also want a world where someone can put their real name on their CV, resume, application without it negatively affecting their hireability. My question is, if an international student asks whether they should use this strategy, should I say yes based on the name discrimination research, or say no and encourage them to continue applying until they find a job that accepts them as they are, name and all? Further complicating matters is the fact that continue applying until may have a deadline due to the grace period between graduation and having to find an H-1B sponsor. It's a meaty question.
That's a tricky question. But also my name is Fertile, which is very different and not typical. And if somebody saw that on the application and they just see Fertile Ramos, they might think I'm like, you know, have a Hispanic heritage, right? I often get like Spanish mailers. It's pretty funny. Although, you know, there have been times in the past where I put in my initials on applications, and that maybe is a happy medium. But I am more aligned with the idea of like, call me by the name I was given. And if y'all can't get with that, then I'm sorry, maybe it's not the right place for me. So I think for me, I believe that, you know, even just trying to pronounce other people's names right is very important, because, you know, you're already misidentifying them. And I wouldn't want to be misidentified for years at a job when they can't say my name properly. So for me, maybe in the application process, do initials. I don't know, whatever serves you best, but I'm aligned with, you know, your name has meaning and your name has value and your name is you. So if that's how you want to be represented, then do that thing.
Yeah, I think being in the tech world, I think this question comes up a lot, and I agree that, or I would ask, you know, your friend, how much does that, how much does their name really matter for them in this instance, right? And do they really feel like it would benefit them to use their American name, so to speak? And if they really truly believe that, it's their choice to put that, right? At the end of the day, when you get the job and you go through the process of assigning papers and all that, you're going to put whatever name is on like your social security card and you know, your formal name and all that. And whatever's on your resume is not going to define the rest of your career, right? Because people have something on their resume and then they go into the workplace and they actually tell people and introduce themselves as, maybe it's their nickname or maybe it's a name that they go by, right? So the resume is just one piece of paper to kind of get you through the door. and if they do feel like, unfortunately there are feelings there, and I can't say whether the person reviewing your resume is actually going to look at your name and say, oh, I can't pronounce this, or I'm going to assume that this person needs a visa, so I'm going to just pass on it. Hopefully that's not happening, because usually with, at least with like these companies, they have a question on whether sponsorship would be needed, right? And they usually have that built into their process. So the name wouldn't be that reason per se, but I know that there's unconscious bias out there by people. So it's just hard to say. And again, like once you get a job, you can establish yourself and your name by introducing yourself and just being confident in that and making sure that people pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, I would say for my industry as well, in the hospitality world, there isn't really any bias towards any names. It's not something that they would read on a resume, and it doesn't, you know, change any opportunity for growth, for even employment. For instance, when I was in Momofuku, New York, we had we take a lot of interns from international, and there was a young kid named Max from China, and you know, now that was in 2010. If we fast forward till now, he's actually the executive chef for Cove, which is their 2 Michelin star. And I recently saw that he didn't change his name to show what his real name was, but he is using it more in a more like cultural representation way. But I don't think in my industry that there isn't any prejudice in that form, whether it's name. It's really just on your ability to.
Great. Thank you for that question, Jared, and to the panelists for their different approaches. I know I do like, I like when he says, we do want a world where someone can put their real name on their CV and resume and application. I mean, so yeah, it just feels like I don't know, it's like what you feel is right. Let's see. Okay, so I do want to kind of give you guys some time. We're doing really great with this panel. You guys are so good. I feel like you're the best students. We gave you these parameters. Here are the questions. Here's the how much time you get. But there was a part where we were hoping that you were able to maybe that you'd want to spotlight or highlight one question from a student that was on that Padlet. Did you guys get to take a look at that Padlet already? Because I know there are quite a few questions from our Kapwa students who are in attendance, but we don't have time to answer every single one. So, but I was thinking maybe at least maybe one per panelist can choose their, well, I shouldn't say favorite question. I don't want anyone to think it's a competition, but a question that you felt like you really want to answer live. And then maybe the other questions you can just answer by typing something up. But yeah, if anybody wants to start, let me know, and then let me go to that Padlet and I can copy and paste the question you chose.
I can start off because I sort of cheated. The researcher in me just found a common theme in all the
Yay!
questions. And so I will do my best to answer the following like thematics, which is like share what multicultural education and social justice entails. What is that? And how to end up at Google. So my master's and my doctorate were both based in multicultural education and social justice. My master's was focused on counseling, specifically in healing of communities and understanding the intersectionalities of people and their different lived experiences based on varying cultures in order to be an effective counselor, right? And be able to help people based off of their different backgrounds and understanding that. So you don't approach counseling just one way for everyone because it's not going to work. And then my doctorate was focused on education, so more academia and how does culture impact academics and students, and how as educators can we dismantle a system initially constructed for a very narrow community, right? Like if you go way back, white males, and then what interventions can we inject to minimize disparities and bring about equitable outcomes for students, right? And so a little bit different, counseling and education. And then I mentioned how I got to Google a little bit earlier. In my role now, though it's not focused on students, the general sentiment of helping others is still there. So my role specifically, I work on all things like internal mobility, meaning how people move around within the company. So I work with employees of the company. And to generalize or to oversimplify, I'm helping them like how to figure out the best, the most equitable ways and policies and processes of how people move around. And I get to flex a lot of counseling skills because I work with a lot of Googlers one-on-one, right? In these sort of like career counseling sessions to some degree. But Googlers with different, or we call them Googlers, but employees with different backgrounds, right? So there are employees who their project was wrapped and they actually have a timeline to find a new opportunity, right, within the company. And then there's other aspects where I'm focusing on retention of our high attrition employees, right? So focusing on our more marginalized groups of employees, and then also working with any DACA employees we have, which we do have a few, and also like visa impacted employees where their visa might be expiring. And so looking at that, and then just looking at the process in general. And I ended up there just because I was very open to, well, you know, I wanted to do diversity consultant, like anti-bias work with some tech companies. I was like in parallel looking for professor positions, and honestly, education positions were very scarce in the Bay Area. I think maybe at the time people weren't retiring yet or what, but I just couldn't find opportunities. And I did find some counseling opportunities and didn't get them, right? I was very disappointed, and I thought I was overqualified or very qualified, but didn't get them. And then I applied for or interviewed for some other roles as well. And I saw on Google's job search, whatever, this role pops up. And I was reading the description. I was like, I think that I might have some qualifications for this. Like, I think I might fit. And I think it just worked out that I was open to it. And the hiring manager at the time was looking for someone who maybe had a background like I did, right? And maybe though I didn't have any background in the technical like companies and working at a tech company, she liked my background in counseling and diversity, right? So just being open to that opportunity, and I think that helped me.
Yeah, it's also you're leveraging what you know already and putting it like it's portable, right? The skills that you're talking about as being an educator, counselor are portable in this other field if you know what you're looking for. Like it's also a little creative and not creative interpretation as if you're making it up, but there's overlap, right? We're all just using like the same language, really. But it's
say that like
yeah,
the tech speak is like transferable skill.
Yes.
So
yes.
Think about that. Like,
yeah,
I was able to, you know, like to transfer, like connect the dots for someone to see like how the work that I've done or my experience applies to another area, right? And so doing your preparation to do that and connect the dots for people opens their eyes. And it's really just like changing the language a bit. So I was like looking at the job description, making sure I translate it for them. And then one last little bit I do want to mention, right? Maybe unpopular opinion or something that people don't really talk about as well is, you know, your job is one aspect, but going back to like really thinking about doing what's best for you, right? Yes, like go for your passion and look for jobs that you're really interested in, but it's also okay if you land in a job where maybe you don't love it at the time and that's just like a placeholder for you, or maybe that's your job and you get to do all your time outside of your job to do things that you're really passionate about as well. I think that's not something that's spoken enough because people think like, oh, I need to do a job that I absolutely love. And yes, that's great, but there are aspects of my job that I don't love, right? And I fill that cup by doing things when I volunteer.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of artists end up doing that. They have the job that pays the bills, but then they're able to do the art that they want to do. But not everybody's built to do that, right? So some people do need to find the job that will fill their cup, as you so poetically put it. Thank you so much for that. Did any of the other panelists want to jump in with the question? Yeah, Phillip, go ahead.
So I'm going to answer from Andrew Avellino, who's also from National City. He asked, I grew up in National City as well, and I was wondering what were your favorite places to eat at the National City and San Diego growing up. Other questions I have, who or what inspired you to start cooking? How did you feel like when you first opened your first restaurant? And how do you provide meals for the community? So multi-layer, I think growing up in South Bay, there's so many, like, just because, you know, a lot of my friends think because I'm a chef, I like to eat high-end food. I still really love like low-brow taco shops can't get away from them. Super Sergio's, obviously we know, really greasy heavy. There's a taco shop that used to be by the 2-story McDonald's that does the carne asada fries with the thick fries, also the jam. Star Express down on Plaza Boulevard, salt and pepper fish, super fire. Pho Hua, favorite pho in San Diego. Across the street, Min Ki, the duck noodle soup, A Chow, which is like the fried spring rolls. I mean, the list could go on with just like, I literally love to dive into certain neighborhoods and then find the food within the different regions. And especially during the quarantine and everything that we went through this past year, it allowed an opportunity to just go and explore your own neighborhood. You know, everyone lives in these certain silo bubbles, but now they're extremely hyper bubbles since you're not allowed to leave your home. So a lot of people are spending a lot of time walking, hopefully walking their neighborhood, supporting local business. So I think there was a lot of opportunity for people to find the different hidden gems. You know, I'm still waiting for Cafe Lamaz to open back up, Fun Steakhouse down in Highlands. So there's just those different things. His other question was, who and what inspired you to start cooking? It was really, I probably give a lot of credit to my grandmother. I really love eating desserts. I still love eating desserts as a kid, but she got tired of making it for me, so she taught me how to make carrot cake and chocolate cake from scratch, so I would stop bothering her. And that really, and she would just leave me alone in the kitchen. So I think that's what really spurned it. And then actually, you know, my 18 years cooking, I've assisted and opened up, you know, mini restaurants from, you know, like 12 of the Tender Greens locations to Born and Raised, Ironside, Captain Commerce locally. But actually, I left Consortium August 17, 2019, to work on my first solo project. Obviously, 2020 happened for everyone, and then now we're in 2021. But we actually just opened up our first brick and mortar 2 days ago in Liberty Public Market. It's a ramen shop, and we do chirashi bowls. I studied Japanese in high school, learned the language, could write katakana and kanji as well. And so out of all cuisines, Japanese is my favorite. The simplicity of it, the clean flavors, and the respect and the history of the culture. And so opening a ramen shop was something down in the ecosystem, but an opportunity came up and we were able to move it up pretty quickly, which leads to the next project we'll open up next month, which is our rice bowl concept in Liberty Public Market, along with a few others down in National City. And how do you provide meals for our community? So that is multi-layers. With the rice bowls, we do a 1-for-1 program, meaning every rice bowl you purchase, we tally up and then we donate that same amount each week to different communities in the neighborhood, whether it was the Kimball Towers, to Tuma Park, to the other 8 or 9 different nonprofits that we work with all across San Diego, which then spurned into, which I never thought that I would do in my career, but we ended up finding grants called Fish to Families. Part of the whole ecosystem troubling with the food pandemic was the heightened awareness of food insecurities. There was food insecurities before the pandemic, during, and it'll be here after the pandemic. And so this was just a solution to that problem. So we partnered up with the Tuna Harbor Dockside Markets, San Diego Foundation, NOAA Fisheries, and Open Gym, which is a nonprofit. We received the grants. We then contract out to Craft Meals to then provide the meals. So we purchase fish. We receive grains from Father Joe's. We support local farms as well, and then cook and package, which then goes into distribution with other local nonprofits like pillars of the community, project New Village, Good Neighbor Project, Father Joe's, Olive Garden Learning Center, and the list goes on. And to date, since the start of the pandemic, March 16th of last year, we've done over 300,000 meals to the community.
Amazing. Okay, so I guess this is going to be a lightning round for Dr. Kim and Virtual. Yeah, Dr. Kim, do you want to go first? Like, do you highlight a question?
Sure. Okay. My question, or a lot of these questions were about how I decided to go into dentistry and overcoming or pursuing my majors during undergrad. And I have to say that, well, so the question is, what was the greatest obstacle you had to overcome while pursuing your majors? What motivated you then, and what is motivating you now? Could you explain how your love of art, science, and helping others influenced you to pursue dentistry? Truly, I would say that my time in undergrad was the hardest time of my life, more so than actually getting, once I got into grad school. And it was, again, that was a time I was truly tested with my, personal failures. It was survival of the fittest. Like you come into this huge pool of people who are working a lot harder than you, and you don't or so it seems. And every time you keep trying, you're just not making the cut. You're below, the curve, or what not. But I think that during that time, it was so imperative to not get discouraged, because you continuously, again, it's hard to keep trying your best and get knocked down. And if I didn't have, again, it at that point, it could have gone a lot of different ways. If I got, turned off and didn't continue to pursue it. And I think also with, there was questions about dance and how I was able to do that together. I actually needed it for my mental health. I realized that taking 4 upper division science classes wasn't getting me, the grades that I needed. So I had to take a step back and be honest with what my limitations were, and really truly realize that investment of time was, something that I needed to express to have a balance to be able to work forward. But I would say that, there are a lot of times where we don't think we're going to make it, and we're a lot stronger than we realize. So, again, it worked out perfect, but I do think that we will go through many times where we question ourselves constantly. Even once we get to where we are, we're all constantly deciding which path we're going to continue, which way we want to specialize in, how do I want to be an expert in my craft or my my industry. So it's something we're going to keep practicing in the future.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Dr. Kim, because, our students are so, driven, and they want to do everything that they're supposed to do to get into the 4-year. So they'll just fill their schedules with just all general eds and not have an elective, right? Like, I'm just going to take all the science classes and not have anything fun. So I think it is important to have that one thing that's fun. I should have taken my own advice, but, if I were to go back in time, yeah. But like, I think it's super important to have at least the one thing that you need to kind of have a, what is it called? Pressure valve release kind of thing. Virtual, it's you.
Lightning round.
Lightning round. You can do this.
For sure. Actually, what y'all kind of hinted at is very much aligned with a lot of the questions here. So a lot of the questions are asking about, like, how did I end up as my role as a social media manager? How did I get here? What's a typical week look like? How do we even combine art and activism, to do the thing that I'm doing? And also representing Bay Terraces as well. So, honestly, I went to school I was a liberal studies major. I wasn't even in this field at all. I wasn't in marketing at all, but it was when I was still volunteering with my community through the Filipino American Arts and Cultural Festival, where I worked hand in hand with other folks that were doing those different things. So I obtained skills along the way. While I was in school for liberal studies, I was still taking those art classes, and those things that I picked up there informed the work that I do now. Right. So, the things that were the pressure release or the valve release did end up feeding what I ended up doing in the first place, because a typical work week for me is always changing, especially when I was at the ACLU. We were like, during a particular administration, everything was like changing on a daily, so you had to kind of shift and navigate. Some of the hardest things that you have to work with is sometimes working with coalition, y'all might not always agree on the same thing. Y'all might have very different views of what you think we should do in order to move forward. But I'm lucky enough where I get to combine the art and the activism because basically I'm a content creator. I get to create the graphics that might get shared like across wherever, and sometimes those things then tap into just the feelings that you're trying to get in order to make action happen, right? Down at the city, down at the county, down at the state level, so those are wonderful ways where I get to combine my passions, my art, and also the work that I do. So I'm very lucky to do that. But again, find all the different things. Yeah, pick up all the things that you want to try and do. You never know what's going to serve you later, as long as you still take that time for rest, for yourself, and then find ways to recharge and restore. So all of that, I believe.
Oh, that is the perfect way to end our panel. I think I heard a couple of you also talk about like, community work and volunteer work. So it's really nice to be able to do that on, you have your full-time jobs and then you also do that, or in your full-time jobs, you're weaving in the community, and that's really, really important and rad. So that we have like 1 minute. Nope. This is it. This is the minute. So if everybody who's in attendance, we have a survey that we would love for you to fill out. You could just copy and paste that link and then save it for later. But for now, as you're kind of leaving, feel free to drop all your love to the chat, because the panelists can see you. They'll see your awesome comments. But yeah, it would be just really nice if we can just kind of show them some love for this this is a weird situation for me to have. I can't see anybody. It just feels so weird. But thank you, panelists, for being here. Chef Phillip, Annie, Virtual, Dr. Kim. I have an appointment soon. No, I'm kidding. But it was really awesome to hear you guys share your tips and advice and your passions. And my students will be reflecting on this pretty soon for homework. So I will pass those reflections on to you. But yes, and now I am very hungry for everything. Thanks, Kapwa. Yes, show them your love. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm going to be a part of it. This was great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it was fun. We should have like a PH panel or something sometime. Survivors of Paradise Hills. Oh man, you guys did so well. Do you feel okay? Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
You all did so amazing. I got chills from listening to y'all.
I know. I really do wish I had more role models at that age, just at this age. I mean, it's very weird. It's like, how did we figure it out?
Y'all said something very interesting. Like the next generation really aren't limited by a lot of these things that we were limited to before. They've been able to explore so many new avenues, and it's been incredible. So in many ways, they're teaching me a lot of new things as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I think because we had to kind of go through all that shit, like now we can say like we've survived it, and please just listen to me because I'm telling you the truth. Thank you, Dr. Judy.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us. Everyone in the back, Jan, Merwin.
Oh, now you had your own little crew.
Are you at Open Gym right now?
What's up? They're coming in the screen right now.
Hey, y'all.
What's up, Pam?
Very cool. Thank you guys for having us.
And where'd you get your shirt, Phillip?
Erwin actually designs this shirt. All these are being donated to AAPI programs. So percentages.
Oh, how?
Drop it in the chat, Erwin.
No, I was like, how can we get those for our Kapwa students?
Yep.
They got you. Our office space is in Barrio, so it's easy. So I'm gonna like move the camera. This is like really bad. Don't drop it. We're all like right here.
It looks very official.
Yeah, working right. Something like that.
So,
A drawing for the t-shirt.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Picture is color.com. We'll get the information. So there are still some attendees here. We'll get information on the shirts out to all the attendees, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Phillip. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Kim.
Phillip.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Annie,
Dr.
bye,
Kim.
Virtual.
Bye, Annie. Nice to meet y'all. Peace.
Yeah, it's nice to meet
Easy.
you.
Thank you.
Who's still here?
I'm still here.
Okay.
I have another class in 5 minutes. Hi, Virtual. You
You're
want to go to
still
my next
recording,
call?
by the way. Okay, bye.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Did you stop the? You want to stop the recording, Caitlin?
I think so.
Yes.
Oh. Oh.